talking about like. They saw like I pick that up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You better do it.
So it's like, yeah.
You started about 5 minutes in before. Yes. No,
It was my turn. Look at how fashion comes back.
Yeah.
He got it like right before he died, and ironic. That's called Snoopy. And then the one had excited or studious.
Oh, yeah.
It's yeah. Is there
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming out in this treacherous weather. Welcome to the Women's and Gender Education Center. My name is Mimi Marinucci, and I'm a professor in philosophy and gender studies here.
Yes.
It's my great pleasure to have you join us today for session 3 of the Activist in Residence program, made possible by university donors who supported the Activist in Residence endowment. Before we go any further, I'd like to recognize that the space that we're occupying today is built on the unceded homelands of the Spokane people. The traditional homelands of the Colville and Coeur d'Alene peoples are also nearby. Please keep this in mind and critically consider the impact of colonialism in all of our lives, on our campus, and in our local communities. All of us should consider ways to disrupt and dismantle the systems behind these impacts. Here in Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies, WSS, we appreciate those working to support equity and justice across our campus and in the region, including our allies in the Office of Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion, the Pride Center, the Multicultural Center, and all of the academic diversity programs, American Indian Studies, Africana Studies, and Chicana Studies. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Kevin Decker, who is serving as our interim director of GWSS, Dr. Jesse Willis, who is a GWSS faculty member, and to all of our affiliated faculty from many different disciplines across campus. Shout out to our Wage Center Administrative Assistant, Lily Mackin, and to our student workers, Eva Kirkland and Isis Bauer. The return of the Activist in Residence program would not have been possible without our small but mighty team of faculty, staff, and students. Given the state of current events, this program seems even more valuable than ever before. I'm so very grateful and honored to introduce our 2025 Activist in Residence, Jacob Johns. Jacob Hopi and Akimel O'odham is an independent climate activist and an organizer for the community-supported Backbone campaign, which uses creative strategies and artful activism to manifest a world where life, community, nature, and our obligations to future generations are honored as sacred. Today is the third of 4 planned sessions. The final session will be held on February 19th. In addition, some of Jacob's artwork is on display in the Seacrest Gallery in the library. As you can see from at least one of the pieces on display here, his work is often political and always very powerful. Do yourself a favor and check it out while you can. It'll be on display through February 19th. Jake, thank you so much for everything you do. Everyone, let's give our warmest welcome to Jacob Dobbs.
Well, thank you so much. It's really good to be back again. My name is John. I use all human pronouns. I'm based in Spokane, Washington. I do intersectional organizing around the intersection of environmental justice and social justice, and I've been doing it as a community support organizer for the past 8 years. 8 years? Yeah, 8 years now. I have a background working for political action committees, organizing for political action committees that are aligned with the Democratic Party, not for specific candidates, but for ballot initiatives, which is something that I believe in, because you're like basically enacting a law. The law gets done. If you put your faith in people, people act like politicians, right? So we want to make sure that we're seeing change. We want to put stuff happen, but we don't want to like put evil fascists into power, right? Like that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this work for 8 years. I switched over organizing from political action committees here in Washington State to be a community support organizer. At the time, I was doing organizing for a political action committee based in Seattle, but I had a week off, and so I went to Standing Rock, and I was like doing all this stuff, and they let the dog roots on us, and like all this stuff happened, and I started doing supply runs back to Standing Rock after I had got like a video of a Democracy Now video, and they have me video of me fist fighting on the bridge, like shirtless, right out with the dog roots on it. I'm like, you're I'm from Spokane, Washington. My zip code is this. It's my social security number. Right? They put a warrant out for my arrest. They said I was inciting a riot because they gave the interview on Democracy Now right before the action. They also put a warrant out for Indigenous, the host of Democracy Now, for inciting a riot as well, right? Which is crazy. This is all happening during Obama. Everybody celebrates Obama, but I remember Standing Rock. And then after Obama denied a permit, which was supposed to stop the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline buried underneath the river, the construction continued. And it was a real big slap in the face. Neoliberalism is just as bad as fascism, if not worse, but also fascism is bad. And so Trump took over, and Trump was elected president, and I thought that maybe there was something wrong with it. It was a miscount, right? I'm working for a political action committee that's aligned with the Democratic Party, so I'm at this big, fancy Democratic celebration at the Westin in Seattle, and people are crying, right? They're like in the hallways, and, consoling each other, and crying and all this. I won my campaign. I'm solid. I'm good. I did my job, right? It's just a big old thing. I was having a good time. The next day I woke up, and sure enough, this dude was like for real going to be the president. So I drove down to Vashon Island, which is just off the coast of Seattle, and met with the Backbone campaign and signed off that day on 1/11, January 11th, 2016. That was 8 years ago. I don't know math. I don't know numbers. But a long time ago. So the next day, I signed on to the community support organizer to fight the impending destruction that we are starting to see unfold in front of us now. And I've been doing it for 8 years. And I've done a wide variety of things. Those of you who have been to the past couple of talks and had a little taste of what it is. I tried to put together like a timeline, right? Like a linear timeline of all this stuff, because I reopened my social media account to get footage from like a decade ago. And I like had to turn off of it because of the bombardment of negativity that I see online. It's all a propaganda machine. We see that it exists, right? But I went through, sucked it up, and put together this video that's going to, I put together a selection of videos, but if we could go ahead and turn off the light, just to give you a little bit of taste what it means to be a community support organizer.
Which country? Which country? I said Norway, you say pay up. Norway. Norway.
Rock it. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna if you can just pull it and I'll grab the generator. Uh yeah, go ahead, yeah. We need to come out of today or yesterday. Yes, that's fucking iconic. Oh, yeah, wait for the. City cops? Is that the noise? I like control. Those are MP4s. Some chick over there singing a song from Pocahontas. It's really fucking annoying. Fucking God, fucking right, motherfucker! Do something! They can hear us. We're going to scream until they hear us. We're still here. We remain. And more importantly, the president himself says that we have the solution, yet refuses to listen to Indigenous people as we are sitting there at the table demanding to be heard.
We are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change and the lack to be able to do anything about it.
I have a thought that when I'm able to understand the needs of others and connect people to their needs, it would be easier to incentivize change for the greater good.
We believe everyday people can identify solutions for themselves and their community.
We are not affiliated with political parties. We stand in solidarity with other mission-aligned movements and networks. And we believe innovation and learning emerges from experimentation. Our introduction was about President Biden says Indigenous people have the answers to the climate solution. But America is battered upon genocide. We make up less than 1% of the population, yet we have no voice in things. The governments are creating trade deals on our behalf and in no way represent the American people and in no way represent Native Americans in any way. Every solution that they offer is a false solution.
we are headed towards an impending climate collapse, and Jeff Bezos will not save us.
So I wanted to put that together because I wanted to show you all like frontline stuff, like frontline things. Like this is stuff. I know it's hardcore resistance, but a lot of the stuff there has a lot of backstory. Like we put together a tank and we push it down the streets of DC. Right? We made a big puppet. We're flying, flew around the country, flying this big balloon of Donald Trump. I got to hold him as he drove by, gave him the finger. There's a lot of stuff on there that's like really, really big, and I wanted to show all of these different things. There's a lot of backstories, a lot of that stuff, but I wanted to say this in a non-linear way because as I started to formulate it, I was like, okay, we'll start at the beginning, and then we'll work our way to the present moment, maybe into the future, right? But that doesn't really work because I don't believe in linear time. I don't believe that's how it works. And as we lean into the last session, which is the organizing model that I use, which is going to be the next session. It'll make more sense when I talk about nonlinear time space and what it means for us to just be able to be fluid in the moment that we're at. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about who I am, how I got started. So I'm born in Arizona. In Arizona, my tribes are O'odham, Akimel O'odham, and Hopi. And we're from the Phoenix area, Four Corners. But we grew up in Phoenix. And in Phoenix, there's a bunch of tribes. I think there's 27 tribes in Washington State. And one of those tribes was in the early 90s. It's the Yavapai Apache. So there's a small the reservation of Apache people that lived next to Salt River, and they had a bingo hall. And this is in the early 90s where there was only bingo halls, right? There was a lot of there's no economic inflow to reservations. And so the gambling was one way that the reservations were able to raise funds. Before that, it was fireworks. You know, there's all these different ways that Native Americans have tried to bring economic booms to the reservation. And one of those was by gambling. So they had their sort of their sovereignty and said, we are going to do bingo halls. And so everybody had bingo halls. It was all over. Everybody had bingo halls because it was legal. Well, this tribe, these Apaches, said, you know what? This is our land. We're going to do what we want. And we're going to order a bunch of machines, slot machines. And so they bought a bunch of machines that came down from Vegas or Laughlin, and they were bringing them down, and ATF showed up, and FBI showed up. And they said, you guys can't do this. And they said, yes, we can, because this is our land. And this is in the 90s, back before we had internet. We didn't have text messaging, right? We had a phone. Like, I was still fairly young back then, but it was a word of mouth sort of situation. And people got on, they made a phone tree. And as soon as they found out about the FBI and the ATF coming to try to take those machines, the community mobilized, and Native Americans from the surrounding area mobilized and held a standoff with the ATF and the FBI. And I was just like a little kid, right? I was like 5 or 6 or something. I didn't know what's going on. I know there's music playing. It's like, this is a powwow. What's going on? Everything was fine. Why did those men have assault rifles on us? Well, the ATF and FBI finally backed down, because there was so many people there that stood up. They came and stood up and showed show of force and showed solidarity. And it was from that the governor of Arizona said, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and give you guys a gaming patent since it's your land. And so from that moment on, every single reservation across America overnight started buying machines because it said these tribes showed us the way. And it was a powerful thing for me as a young child to see this, and to see how people just come together despite the violence that is forced upon us by colonial forces and negativity. And it's really a powerful thing that stuck with me. This day, if you go to the Fort McDowell Yavapai Apache Reservation, they have a statue of that standoff that took place. And from that moment in time, that there was an economic boom across Indian country based off of that stand against the FBI and the ATF. I wanted to bring up that. Oh, there's already a thing over there. That's why it's loud. Give me a move. Sometimes you get stuff that's like that happens to you, and you like don't know how to explain it. You know, as an activist, somebody does frontline activism, like for a life or like a career, right? I don't make very much money. I make small amounts of money. A community support organizing program is basically, I'm a solo nonprofit doing activism, right? I have to convince people to give me money to do this. And I suck at that. I don't ask people for money. That's crazy. And so for years, I was just like trying to do the work, and people saw that I was doing the work, and people would contribute like $5, $10 a month. And so it was a monthly donation that people were able to get tax receipts at the end, and it was able to help me to cover our cost of living. And my daughter was young at the time. She's still young, but she's just almost as tall as I am. The thing is that like we gotta eat, right? Like we gotta eat, but we also gotta do the work. And so thankfully, I was talented, right? Like I spent a lot of time in prison, in maximum security prison, where I taught myself how to draw, and I spent doing a bunch of other stuff, doing all these other things. And when you're stuck in a cell by yourself, you sort of like have to do a lot of introspection. My little brother had killed himself when I was 17, and I had found his body in the closet, and I tried to bring him back to life. And I couldn't. And his face was blue. He had thrown up, and I was trying to give him CPR. It was very traumatic. And after that happened, I couldn't look in mirrors because we looked so much alike. All I could see was his dead body when I looked at my own face, and it was like really bad. It was really tragic. And I had a hard time dealing with that. And so one day I ended up getting in a high-speed chase with the police, and then crashing my car into a couple of cops. I went to the res, and then I went out to the desert there, and I just hit a dead end. There was nothing where to go. I turned around, and there was just a wall of cops. I just picked one and crashed into them. I spent the next 8 years in prison, maximum security prison, for assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. And when you're in there with that much time, it's a lot, especially if you're 19, right? Like 8 years is a long time to a 19. 8 years ain't that much to a 50-year-old person. Right? 8 years is a long time to a 19-year-old. So I was in there with a lot of stuff, and I used to have a lot of things that were really hard for me to convey. And it all started it was only through meditation that I was able to maintain sanity. And that meditation gave me clarity. And with this complexity of emotions and things that sometimes happen to us, it's better to release that by condensing it and compressing it all into a video. You go ahead and turn that light up. Oh, apologies. Sorry, 1 second. I am a boomer. Okay, I'm gonna start over.
There, I was a swimmer.
Sorry.
When I was like 8 years old, I dreamt that I was a swan, and I was running and running and running and running, and I was scared, and I had my baby in my hands, and I was running with my daughter, running, running, and running, running, and running, and I was so afraid that something was chasing me, and I could hear it, blah, blah. And something hit me from the back, and I fell, and my daughter fell just feet in front of me, but I couldn't move, and she was crying, and a horse had been chasing us, and someone was on the back, and the horse's foot stepped on my daughter's skull, killing her right in front of me. I couldn't move, I couldn't help. And the next thing I knew, I was rolled over, and I looked up, and it was a U.S. cavalryman, and he was on horseback, and he shot me in the head. And I had that same dream over and over and over for like a full week. And it was super traumatic because I'm 8 years old and I don't even watch scary stuff. I'm just a little kid. And it was so graphic and it was so traumatic. And every night I went to bed and I dreamt it and I experienced it over and over and over again for a full week. And then it stopped. 20 years later, I moved to Spokane, and I'm just walking around, checking stuff out, and I got to this one part of this river, and I started walking. I started coughing, coughing. I started to cough so hard, I got to my hands and knees and started throwing up. And I was, what the hell? I go down on the ground, I was throwing up. I couldn't know what the hell was going on. And when I looked up, I wiped my mouth, I opened my eyes, and I had deja vu because I remembered that this was the place that I had been killed. and just feet from where I had thrown up is where my daughter had been killed by that U.S. cavalryman. And I didn't know what to do with that information. I went and did all kinds of research on our area, and I knew that that land had been tainted with the blood of innocents and that I had been killed there. So fast forward 3 years, and there was this group that was working on doing this ceremony with other folks around the world who were trying to prevent genocide. And I told the people about my past life and where I was killed, and that I wanted to heal the land where it had been killed. And I was willing to participate as long as we could do it close to where it was killed. And so I went down the road to where the Unitarian Universalist Church is in Spokane. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, listen, we're planning on doing this ceremony. Will you let us do it? And they said, yeah.
The year 2015 was the 125th year anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre. And so there was a calling for people to join ceremony with them. Those people that are there at the Wounded Knee around Pine Ridge. And the guy, they were looking for us. He put a call out, hey, listen, come hold ceremony with us. And so there's a bunch of people around the nation and around the country and around the globe actually that were taking place in this healing ceremony. And having some previous experience holding like these synchronistic meditation circles with different groups around the globe, thought to myself, what else is right up my alley? And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And he put out a list of things that you would need to have it, for real. And so we set out to make that thing happen. But one of the things they had said is to have a sacred fire be lit for 4 days so that they can use it. I don't know. So I was in the teepee, living in that teepee, and I fell asleep on the first night after I was soaking in fire. And I woke up, and this crow was just outside the tent, and he was making noise. I woke up so loud, and thankfully they had done that because it was just in the nick of time, and the fire had almost gone out. And so I restoked the fire, and the next thing I knew, an owl was outside the teepee. He was making all this noise, hoot, hoot. Thankfully, he was making that noise too because I realized that the fire had just gone out. So I stoked the fire, and I realized that maybe first night I shouldn't be sleeping like that. So there was this guy who was like a local leader of the native communities, and we wanted him to participate in the ceremony because of who he was, and he was a real solid dude. And so he comes to check out the TV and just check it out, make sure it's legitimate. He comes inside, and I tell him what I was going to do and what we've been doing and what we're going to do. And he approved of that. And so he started to sing this song that comes from his people, right? It was a song that one of the leaders of this tribe that led the resistance against the Americans sang. And when he first sang the song, he was approached by the American government to have peace talks and get a treaty. So him and a couple of other tribal leaders went over there to meet with this general. And as soon as they entered into the fort, the Americans arrested them and they tried this for treason and insertion or whatever, and then they ended up hanging them. And so right before they hung this tribal leader, they asked him, "What do you have any last words?" And he says, "No, I don't have any last words, but I want to sing this song." And so he sang this death song, and the song is what the song he's going to share with us at ceremony. So he sang us the song, and then where that land is at, it's like it was supposed to be a healing ceremony, and where the Unitarian Church is in Spokane, it's actually a part of a fort that the Americans used to use. They ended up naming that fort after that general that killed the Indians, and so that land really needed to be healed. And so after he left, it was in the middle of winter, snowing, wind was blowing, and I started hearing somebody outside. I was messing around. I was like, man, so I got up in the middle of the night and I went outside to look in the outside the teepee to mess around because there was nothing out there. It was snow. It was all windy and there was no evidence of tracks. And so I got back inside and I could hear somebody else with a man's voice or something like that. the more I started to listen to it, like you started to hear it in the wind, it was like somebody off in the distance. And they were singing a song, and that song that they were singing was that man's death song coming through the wind. Ceremony went over Christmas time, and so my daughter comes to the teepee to have Christmas in the teepee. I told her Santa Claus comes to teepees too, you know, and she, I think she had a good experience from it. After the fourth day of having the fire lit, we had a ceremony. We had gathered a bunch of people from the community to get together at the Reverend Unitarian Church. We spoke on behalf of Unitarians and what we were all gathered there for was to release the energy and heal the land and do so in sync with other groups around the nation and the globe are taking part in the ceremony. And ended up having a fire afterwards. We got everybody fried rice. So.
If I try to tell you that, a lot, right? It's a little overwhelming. It's a little overwhelming. It's like, hey, one time my baby died right here, like a lifetime ago, right? It's a lot to say to somebody. But if I just put it all, condense it into a video, I can just push play, go sit down. It's a really wonderful thing to be able to do. It's really nice. I really, you know, when you have like a lot of stuff like that, you have a lot of time on your hands, right? Especially if you have a lot of trauma, a lot of messed up childhood or whatever, like. If you're stuck alone in a cell for 8 years by yourself and you only get to leave like twice a week, like you get some time to think about things. You get some time to do stuff. That was a pretty intense stuff. And you know, a lot of the stuff that happened to me as a child was very traumatic. But a lot of the stuff that I had was like bleed throughs of like other lives. Other timelines, other lives that I've lived on this planet existence, and it was really confusing for me. It was like this strange thing. Like I remember something happened that didn't really happen, and like vice versa. It was really confusing for me. And so, you know, when I was stuck in prison, I had to deal with it. I didn't have any other. There was no other way to numb the pain. I had to like really like feel it for what it is. I had come to terms with everything that has happened to me, and you know. Over time, I ended up getting out and spending time here in Spokane, where I came and paroled to. So you can see here, little young me. I don't know how long ago. But as I spent 8 years in prison, I meditated, I worked out, I fought, but I drew a lot too, and I learned to draw. And you know, it really helped me to like escape because I could just like sit down with a pen and do whatever. And, like, week would go by or whatever. And, you know, it's something like that. And it's really helpful. I really am thankful for that time in prison because I was able to teach myself how to draw, how to paint, how to do all these things. I mean, I'd done it before, but not good, right? Like it takes time and practice. Like I tell my daughter, like, you want to draw a hand? Like you just got to practice it for 5 years. Like that's a real thing. That is not a joke. Like you want to be able to practice for 5 years. That's a real thing. And when you're stuck in prison like that, it's something else. You know, you really get stuck. Trying to come to terms with everything and find ways that you can release trauma, release all these things that really don't make sense, that are super complicated, but now make sense because you found clarity. Go ahead and turn that up. Oh, sorry.
In prison.
Oh, no, sorry. That's me.
When I was 19, I was sentenced to 8 years in prison. I had been convicted of assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. When you're looking at that much time, you have years to kill. And so I would meditate every day for an hour. And when I woke up, I would just roll over and sit on the floor and meditate. But one time I had this really intense nightmare. I was driving with my daughter in the car, and I got pulled over. Cop wrote me all sorts of tickets, and they were used against me in court, and I lost custody of my daughter. My life was destroyed, and it was all traceable back to that one moment in time. So when I woke up, I started to meditate, thinking back on a moment in time that was very specific, something that I could recreate, put myself in. And the image of the door opening on the elevator, it kept coming back, and I put myself in that time in that space and gave myself a warning. A warning. I was doing hair, finishing up for my clients, coming up from the basement with my daughter and her. And I noticed something familiar. It was like a weird sense of deja vu. And when I saw the elevator door opening, all of a sudden I heard this alarm. I was supposed to drive my client home and do all these extra errands, and I said no. And I switched timelines. We share split custody of our daughter today. I used to dream all kinds of things, and through deep meditation, I was able to give myself warnings beyond the limits of time and space. Within that deep meditative state, I was able to listen to the warnings and switch timelines and avoid catastrophe. I know this because I'm not from this timeline.
Really complicated, right? How do you explain that to somebody? It's like, oh, man, I was in prison, right? And then for 3 days straight, I just sat up. It's like, all right, I'm going to prevent this catastrophe from happening. Pay attention, future you, right? Like, that's a thing. And it took place, but it was like freaky, like super freaky, right? How do you explain that? I could paint it or I could make a video. Video's easier. And I can sit down. Turning, looking at finding ways to escape reality and get your yuck out, purge all of the darkness inside of us is something that we do, right? Like it's a spiritual practice for me and my tradition. We purge out the yuck that we consume, that we absorb from outside forces, and we reaffirm within our own minds the true power that we have contained inside of us. And I think that really helps. That really helps. It really helps. But when we start doing, trying to find ways to convey messages that it would really be impactful, right? Like if I try to explain to you something that's like very complex, very, very something, and it doesn't convey, then it doesn't make sense. But if I could paint a painting or make an expression or draw a bang or like something, right? Like you could feel it. And when you feel something like that, it's another level of communication, right? Like I don't get what you're saying. Your words meaningless to me, but I can feel your heart right now. I'm down, right? Like that's the vibe. I want solid vibes from something like that. And so, spending 8 years in prison, I spent a lot of time in there. I didn't have a whole lot of money doing that, so I would tattoo people. That's basically how I made money, was tattooing people. I was locked up, but I got really good at it, and I got really good at drawing because we didn't have nothing to do. And everybody in prison has nothing to do, so they're all pretty good. But in doing so, I was able to get out of prison and continue to do paintings, doing drawing, more and more stuff. Actually got out of prison, and then I got a scholarship to go to hair school. So I went to hair school here in Spokane, and I had a salon for like 2 years. I was doing hair. I hate touching people anymore, but I don't do hair anymore. I was able to do that. I was a DJ. I started rave parties at night. We had a nocturnal bass crew, was the whole thing, right? Like we did the whole thing. And I didn't really make a whole lot of money doing that. And so I would always draw and I always paint, but I was also trying to like make way for my clients, my salon, and all this stuff. So I rented a booth at the powwow, and I was cutting all the hair, cutting hair for free up on this thing, and then donating all the money back to the powwow, right? Well, you got to put up, if you're going to donate, ask for free, it's free on donation, put a suggested donation because people are dropping like pennies in there or whatever. Anyway, so for 3 days straight, I'm cutting hair on the powwow, and I had some paintings up there because I'm trying to recoup the loss. And somebody walked by and they said, hey, I really like your painting. Would you like to have a solo art show at Washington State University? I said, nah. I could say, yeah. So for like a whole year, for a full year out of doing hair and like standing up there, I got like a solo art show at the University of Washington School of Social Work. And so for a full year, I drew, I make, I mean, all kinds of stuff. There's an overboard of stuff. But I'm thankful that I was able to spend that time because that's literally how I eat. Like, I mean, hand to mouth, like in painting. I do acting. I do all kinds of rando stuff. This is one, right? Like rando stuff in order to pay the bills. But in doing so, I also have to try to sell myself in a good way that's not sleazy. Oh, no, sorry. I need to pay attention to this. Here we go. And
My name is Jacob Jones. I'm an artist from Oregon. My work stems from my own life experiences and those that led my thoughts to feel our connectivity as sentient beings on this planet, simply because humanity around the world will recognize a facial material. If you do a really good eye or a perfect shadow cast upon those, we can see familiar features in ourselves. We are the Earth. We are an extension of the planetary consciousness, but humanity itself is facing a crisis that we've never seen before. The deadly time is running out. It is our duty to remind humanity that our shared future is at stake as a species. And we will save ourselves.
really nice to stay positive, doing shameless self-promotion at the same time. That's really nice. But in trying to come to terms with stuff is really, a way for us to sort of overcome trauma. And, for those of us who have dealt with trauma, and all of us have, we deal with it in different ways. I mean, for me personally, I got drunk and crashed my car into some cops and went to prison for 8 years, right? That's how I dealt with it. But other people deal with it different ways. And, one of the things that really helped me as an artist is to just get it out, to find new things and positive things that we can do with the trauma, to transform the pain, transform all of these old things, transform death into rebirth, something new, something blossoming. We can take dark, black and white images and splash them with color, make them contemporary. One of the things that I really like to do is paint. And in doing so, I got better and better. And eventually my tribe, I'm O'odham, Hopi and Akimel O'odham. My tribe's a Gila River Indian community back home in Arizona. One of my great grandma is actually a world famous basket weaver. She was a traditional basket weaver of the O'odham people, but she does like odd numbers. So she would do like squash blossoms and all this stuff. So it's a specific basket pattern that is weaved into it that she's done. She's like world famous for doing these things. She passed on because she lived to be 115. She passed on. And when she died, she had 348 great grandkids. I was one of them. Yeah, 348, which is huge.
Wow.
It's a lot. I mean, that's the impact that we have, right? Like that, we look at it in those spaces. And what I was able to, they had built a brand new cultural center, and they asked me to come down, and they hired me to come down and paint something. And so I thought, since my great grandma has an exhibit in the museum itself, to take one of her paintings or one of her designs and put it in a painting.
This is my little brother. When I was 17, he killed himself. When I was 15, he's 15 years old and died. We found him, really messed us up. When I started doing, I couldn't look in the mirrors because we look alike. I had a hard time. I could just see him right there, crying. Every single time I looked in the mirror, and I got out, I started doing like work with people who are dealing with the loss of a loved one due to suicide. So back home, I do a lot of work with people who are just dealing with that type of stuff. It's kind of sad sitting here being in space, thinking about what it would look like if he was an adult. And plus, it's like, I don't believe in heaven, but if there was such a place, this will embody that, just feel like home. And that's what I think it's really going to be.
at the time, that was like the largest painting I did. It's like 26 by 18 feet. It's fairly big, fairly large painting. And that's like at the cultural center, right? So my dead little brother, my dead cousin, my dead grandma. Fantastic. But I think that's one of the beautiful things. Is like we can look back at all of this trauma that has happened to us in our lives, all the bad things that have happened to us in life, and we can be sad about it. We can dwell in it, and we can be stuck. And it's really easy to do that. I mean, I find myself constantly being stuck, being mad about stuff that happened 10 years ago. You know, we feel that way. We don't get this random stuff. I was like, I should kick his ass. You know, you think,
yeah.
But the truth is that we gotta find ways to transform, overcome, and do all these things, and find ways to move forward. And so, also convey a lot of things that like are kind of like out of this world. That don't really make a whole lot of sense from the way that we're taught that reality works and everything is right. Like that's crazy. And so, this is something that actually happened just down the road. Here, stack these on top of each other. I want to make sure that sound is working. Yes. But it's once again, it's just a great way to purge these things that are stuck with inside of us.
One time I was driving home from Seattle, and when I was driving, I saw that there was a truck, like it was directly in front of me, a semi. And so I was just sort of following behind him. And there was another car that was coming onto the freeway. And when I saw him come on, I didn't slow down, and they tried to get right in between me and the semi. They crashed. And I blacked out. I woke up and I was in a hospital, and I was really, really confused. I started to ask what happened, and they said that I was in an accident and that the other people had died. And so I sat up in the hospital bed and I started to meditate. And put myself back into the car, right back into a point in time where I could tell myself to just slow down. I see them coming, and I see myself coming, and they're coming on, to just slow down. I put myself right back into the car, following that truck, and slow the fuck down. And when I opened my eyes, I was back in the car, and I slowed down. It was as if that other timeline never existed. I joined this version of reality, and I remain grateful eternally to the universe for giving me this chance.
How do you say that to somebody? Like, how do you say? I try to tell my dad that I'm casually driving, and I'm like, my dad's, and I'm like, hey, you know what happened over here one time? And it blew his mind. It's like, whatever. But like, you have to get it out. Like, that's a, like, imagine having that in your mind and your heart, and you don't know what to do with it. How do you say that? How do you explain it? You're a crazy person, right? You're locked up for stuff like this. You're crazy. What are you talking about? But here I am. And I remember so I was really fucked up in the hospital, messed up, I was feeling sad, and then they told me that somebody died. And I said, oh my God, I started panicking. I was freaking out. But just like as I did in the elevator, when the door opened up, there was a moment in time where I remember everything about it. I remember feeling the taste, the smell, I can remember the sensation, I could feel all these things. And being able to put yourself back in a space that is outside of a linear concept was allowed me somehow to open my eyes and being able to prevent that from happening in some cosmic way that I can't really explain. And so when you get stuff like that, right, like you got to purge it. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff to purge. And the more that you start doing, the more that you start doing introspective stuff, the more everything starts to make sense. And it's like, okay, now we come full circle. That makes a lot of sense.
I was little, I used to have a lot of dreams. And I didn't think anything of it. Everybody would tell me, oh, they're just dreams, you're just having a nightmare. But whenever I would go to sleep, I would wake up and I would be in another time, and I would be experiencing another life. And sometimes it's not good. Sometimes it was really bad. And I started to keep having these dreams, and they were really intense. One time I jumped out as this deer, And I was really happy to be this deer. I was playing and I was so happy to be back into life. And I was so excited. I was just running around and being a deer and walking places, just living in the forest. It was so good. And one time I was out and I was walking through the forest with my mom and I was looking for some food to eat. And I came across this weird place in the forest. It was all blank. So I followed my mom across this place. And all of a sudden, something happened. I didn't know what. I was trying to get up. I didn't know what to do. Everything was confusing. I looked up. There's somebody above me. And everything started to fade away. About 25 years later, I was driving down the forests in Washington State, just driving, and I turned a corner. And I looked something. And when I looked, it was a little deer, and the baby deer was trying to get up, and I couldn't help it. It was hurt. And so I looked down and I saw this big rock, and I had to put it out of its misery. And so I came over to that poor baby deer, and I wanted it to stop suffering. And it was at that moment that I remember really being the deer dying. It was only through a series of deep meditations that I realized that every murder is a suicide.
So how do you tell somebody, oh, I dreamt I killed myself, but I was a murderer and I was a demon, right? It's a lot of complex stuff and a lot of things like they build like layers upon layers upon layers of things that are just like, what the fuck, And that's one of the things that's really powerful about the different artistic mediums. I mean, video is one of them, film is one of them, art, film, all the things are artistic expression. And one of the things that I think is really helpful about being an artistic person and trying to find ways to capture resistance and capture messages that can convey that same vibe, the same energy that you would gather from being in person with somebody or having a real in-person experience with those folks. A long time ago, I went to Standing Rock, and there was a man there by the name of Dennis Banks, who was one of the former, he was the founder and member of the American Indian movement, which, went worldwide. They set up Alcatraz, set up the Wounded Knee. They did massive things during the 1970s. And I was able to see him at Standing Rock, and people weren't really listening to him or paying attention to him. I had to sit down and listen to this dude just drop knowledge on me. And I would grab with the shaky cell phone video and all that stuff. But after he died, I wanted to just really express this is what he said. This is the energy that he gave. Please cherish this and love it for what it is. Oh, I should turn the sound on.
I guess most importantly that what is happening here, the gathering of the people coming to Standing Rock for one purpose, and that is to, we know why we've come here, and that is to express our support to Standing Rock against the encroachment of this pipeline. And more importantly, is that we've come here not only to stand in support of Standing Rock, but also to strengthen our own community by helping Standing Rock. We, in fact, are helping our own communities at home. And I've seen that many, many times how it works out. Because to see 5,000 people, 6,000 people, 7,000 people, 7,500 people come together for one purpose, and that is to stand in unity against big America, corporate America, pipeline Canada, wherever these pipelines are, they still want a piece of the land that belongs to us. Morally, we own all this land. And that's one thing that America doesn't understand, is that we are still, no matter who has some sort of title, we are morally, we are still the caretakers of this hemisphere. And that's how it's always gonna be. That's how, when I go to the spirit world, I'm gonna tell the creator, say, look, we have tried very desperately to hang on to those duties and responsibilities that you gave to us at birth. We are still trying to take care of the earth, and the earth is still taking care of us. We have that understanding, but there are some people who don't understand that we are the caretakers. But we need help. We need that kind of help here, and that's where we're at.
I try to capture things. Like I'm not one to like pull out a cell phone all the time and do stuff like that. Like especially now as I'm getting older, I'm like I got work to do, right? But we have to capture stuff. As a community support organizer, I have to tell people what I'm doing. I don't have a board, right? I don't have to go and ask for things. I have people that give me small donations a month so that I could do this work. And so instead of me trying to tell people what I'm going to do, right? Because sometimes it sounds far-fetched. Sometimes it sounds out of this fucking world. What do you mean you used to be a deer, right? But we have, I think, the opportunity to show people that there is the power of people. And one of the things I think is really important, especially now in this moment in time, is the fact that there is a struggle right now of fascists. There are a bunch of people who want to see us dead. They want to see the world die. They want to strip everything away from us. And this itself is based out of fear. They know that they have lost. 100% they have lost. And, oppression and all of this stuff only births new growth. It only births new things. It only births solidarity, unity, evolution, and understanding. Let me turn the sound on.
Oh, these boys, relax. I can't breathe. You're doing fine, talking fine. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm about to die in the face. Relax. I can't breathe my face. Be still. What do you want? I can't breathe. Please leave my dick. I can't breathe shit. Get in the car, man. I will. I can't move. Come on. Come on. We are united.
You're witnessing the murder of George Floyd, hearing the words, "I can't breathe," uttered by yet another unarmed American citizen. The urge to help mobilize America folded upon. From Spokane to Minneapolis to Portland and Seattle, COVID-19 could not stop the forward movement of American United. Massive nationwide demonstrations spread to over 60 countries worldwide. The murder of George Floyd was a wake-up call to the world that we can no longer accept systems that oppress and destroy. We must unite for the sake of each other and our shared future.
We are here together, standing in solidarity. We are united. Black lives matter. Native lives matter. Here in Spokane,
population, but make up 43% of police shootings. This is the American Indian movement. Wow. The American Indian movement was founded in Minneapolis. The American Indian movement was founded as a direct response to police brutality against Native Americans. The state police department killed George Floyd. George Floyd won thousands. He got arrested. He said, I can't breathe. Please help me. Please, I can't breathe. Mama,
2 weeks after George Floyd was murdered, the smell of decaying flowers filled the streets. In the autonomous zone around where he was murdered, a memorial was set up where rows of old flowers covered blocks around the area. The feeling around the autonomous zone reminded me of Standing Rock before it was popularized by major media outlets, meaning a space controlled and protected by the people with a strong sense of unity as powerful as the smell of those flowers brought by so many. Minnesota is no stranger to embracing white supremacy and has a history deeply rooted in settler colonialism. Denying Native people sovereignty and access to land and resources for over 2 centuries, Natives have been forcibly removed from their land and their homes. This history of removal has been achieved through unfair treaties that created the reservation system, systematic violence, and warfare, including moving Dakota people into a concentration camp, and the largest mass execution in U.S. history, 38 Dakota men. The state of Minnesota is known for taking over tribal jurisdiction, as well as stealing children from their families and forcing them into boarding schools. On the grounds of Minnesota's state capitol, fully enshrined by the power of the state, Native Americans and other allies hold Columbus guilty of genocide. Native Americans waited far too long and having worked through official channels for years without success. And as shocking as it may be to many people in power, there is no honor in genocide. In order to take steps towards healing, contemporary America needs to listen to what Native communities have been saying. Having a statue like this in front of a state capitol is like having a statue of Adolf Hitler at the Capitol. And enough is enough. To have real change in our country, we must take action. We must unite to correct the wrongs of our past so that we can move forward together in a progressive movement and become the people that we were meant to be. Like many other cities across the nation, Seattle has a history of brutal violence against minority populations. Expressing opposition to systematic racism, police brutality, and violence against people of color, on May 29, 2020, demonstrators took to the streets throughout the city for marches, demonstrations, and sit-ins. By June 8th, there had been 11 straight days with major protests in Seattle. In Capitol Hill, a week-long series of clashes with demonstrators and police near the East Precinct Police Station led up to the police department, eventually abandoning the precinct. On June 8th, after the police department abandoned their precinct, protesters formed the autonomous zone called the Chaz, a Capitol Hill autonomous zone. The zone, originally covering 6 city blocks, included Cal Anderson Park. The Chaz lasted until it was raided on July 1st. No police were allowed in the autonomous zone during the occupation.
George Floyd solidarity protests in Portland, Oregon felt more like a war zone. Under the Trump administration, federal police were grabbing random people from the crowd. Unmarked vehicles snatched up protesters, Nazi style. The Department of Homeland Security sent in officers in tactical gear from more than a half a dozen federal agencies and departments from around the country. Pepper balls and tear gas canisters, flashbangs, as well as toxic green gas were used by this coalition underneath the Trump administration. Tornadoes were literally created with heat generated from so many tear gas canisters. The amazing sense of unity from around the nation will never be forgotten. We are humanity.
Oh, take a deep breath real quick, because that's a lot. I know that's a lot. There's a lot of overwhelming. You're kind of an intense person. I think the beautiful thing about bringing up this is to show you that this is what has already happened. This is what we do as society. This is how we fight back. This is how we stand up against oppressive systems. This is how we move forward and make things happen. This is how we take action. This is how we take to the streets. This is how we use art. This is how we do these things. This is how we rebuild. People were really sad about Trump being I don't know what. Let me say this. People are upset that Trump became the president, but we have to remember that we've been brainwashed with propaganda that's convinced us that this country itself is this beacon of liberty for the rest of the world to follow suit. Mm-hmm. They completely forget about the fact this country was built on genocide and slavery and is a war machine that has been dominating the world through imperialism since the end of World War II. So let us not be shocked at the truth. But as you see here, you've seen from these videos that we have each other. Like we literally have each other. And that's important because logic prevails. Logic prevails against such bullshit, and there's a lot of it. And, as we look at the next 4 years, we have each other. And don't be scared. Fuck these people. That's a real thing. I was recently down in New Mexico, maybe I guess it wasn't recently, 2 years ago. And when I was down there, I was doing some work trying to get some funding from the U.S. Climate Action Network for bringing a delegation of Indigenous Muslim people Indigenous Muslim keepers to Dubai to advocate for contemporary climate policy that we had developed. And in doing so, I had to go to Mexico to meet with the West Coast regional organizers, and they were doing the grant team and all this stuff. And I went out and supported a local movement space and local organizers who wanted me to come out. There was a statue that was taken down of a conquistador back in 2020 during the George Floyd uprising, and they were trying to reinstall it. Basically, this conquistador did horrible things, was tried for war crimes in the 1500s by the Spanish government. This is telling you how bad this person was. Yeah. He cut off the right foot of over 800 Akimel men, naming an entire generation. And they were trying to reinstall a statue of them. There is a weird dynamic in northern New Mexico where there are these Hispanos, which is a term that they have identified for themselves, but they're actually Jewish immigrants that fled Spain during World War II. They came to New Mexico to find safety. And in doing so, they have they've taken on this Spanish identity and basically celebrate their Spanish ancestry and really glorify the conquistador aspect of that history. And these people are Trump supporters. So one of them showed up, pulled out a gun and shot me in the chest, and I died.
I never thought that somebody would bring a gun.
Especially because there's different shapes. Yeah, I wanted to think about it. I'm gonna say that.
this is a 20-minute art film, right? So it's like we had a bunch of video photographers going around. I can share the full length video, but it's like a 20-minute video. Basically, what happened is that the local folks, the local tribes, the local community were really thankful that I survived. They were really grateful that I took the bullet for me. Going back over there was really intense. You know, but I had to sort of go back and come to terms with what took place there, and I had to get it out. I had gone there, and it was just like a regular protest, right? Like we went out there, we had a vigil all night, we did a prayer, gathering right there where I slept next to this thing. I gave up my $200 a night hotel to sleep next to this thing, and in the morning, our prayers were heard. The county commissioner didn't put up the statue up. But when that news was let out, a bunch of right-wing people showed up, a bunch of MAGA Hispanos showed up, and were being really aggressive to the crowd. They asked me to go. It was mainly women and children and two spirits who were there. And in the morning, that's when they showed up, those guys, and they were being really, really aggressive. The police ended up grabbing the shooter and telling him to leave because he was being too aggressive. And then they went back and complained about their First Amendment rights or whatever. The police let him come back, and then when they let him come back, the police left. When he left, they tried to rush into the crowd. I went to stop him. They pulled out a gun and he shot me in the chest with the bullet, with the hollow point bullet. And it went through my chest, clasped my lungs, and through my stomach. It went through I had to cut half of my stomach out. It went through my liver. I had to cut a portion of my liver out. It went through my pancreas. I cut a portion of my pancreas out. It completely destroyed my spleen. I take the spleen out. It was really messed up. But you gotta get it out. Right? Like you can't walk around with that. Just like I was sharing earlier, I spent less than 8 years locked up in maximum security prison. Nothing but me and a pencil, right? That's sometimes we have to get it out. We have to find ways to get it out. We have to find ways to overcome. We have to find ways to transform that pain and that trauma and get it out of our bodies. So if we hold that darkness in us, it turns to cancer, it poisons us, and completely destroys us. When the shooter was going to report, they petitioned to basically let him out on bail, and the judge said no. You're a threat to society. He not only had the one gun on him that he shot me with, but he had multiple firearms in his car, along with the stockpile of ammunition. He was planning on doing a mass shooting that day. When the police went to his house, the FBI raided him. He had automatic switches that he had switched over for his semi-automatic rifles, turning them to fully automatic rifles, and he had 15 of them in his room, along with a lot of white supremacist literature. And the local community was so thankful that I showed up and took a bullet for him. And it's like, I don't know if you ever felt like a famous person, but it's great, man. Strangers coming up to me, I went back, right? Like strangers, I feel like Neo coming back to the colony, whatever. People were like, "This is for you." And I'm like, all right, I get it. I'm just a regular person, whatever. But like the feeling that I had of trying to get it out was really important. And so I saw a picture of this shooter in court when he was denied bail, and then he started to cry. And so in doing that, I had to paint it.
Huh.
Oh. And what I did is I painted his face and I said, right? He was fake alligator tears. It's bullshit. He's sad because he didn't get to get out of jail and do whatever. And I had to get it out because looking at his face brought so many emotions. I just wanted to fucking But I had to get it out. I had to take a fake tear. I could do all the stuff. And after I got it out of my body, and I could sit down and I could look at it. I could say, there it is, outside of me. And so what I did is I brought it back to New Mexico. And I set up a GoPro. And I set down a bunch of markers. And I had the community express and pray. And so for a full week, community members came by and wrote whatever they wanted on his face. And the vibe of it now, like you could feel like the vibe of the room changed, right? When I turned it around, like you could feel the energy around it. But it was a community project. This is about us coming together, coming to terms with the evil that we face, being able to purge it, get it out of our body, putting onto something express that in a way that allows us to transcend, to step forward, to move out of that the victimization sadness space and really take ownership of what took place to it or took place with it. There was an image. Come here. Somebody had taken a picture. Somebody had taken a picture. You walk that one. Somebody had taken a picture of this guy right before he was about to jump over the wall. And I saw the picture. Wow, you know, it was like it's a thing. And so I had to get it out of my body. And so I painted this large painting of this shooter. This is moments before he jumped over the wall and shot me in the chest. It's on a loose canvas because it's massively big, right? You can see how it's supposed to be me.
Yeah, looks like you.
Hold tight, on top. But this is another example. You know how to be able to see something like this and get it out of your body is fantastic. And when I saw the shooter, I made him look like Beavis. I wanted him to look exactly as how he appeared to society and not as. But it helped me to get it out, helped me to get the feelings and emotions out, let everybody see what took place. Fine. It's like, don't worry about it, it's a canvas, it's very durable. The idea is to basically get it out of us. Like how do we move forward? How do we overcome adversity? And I'm not a guru or whatever, but this is just the experiences that I've taken. This is what I've personally lived through in order to sort of overcome and go through all of the bullshit. So I do a lot of work for like all kinds of stuff. I got hired by the Secretary of State to do a mural here in Washington. Actually, what happened is that there was a coalition of people that had passed a bill that basically in Washington State allows people who are just out of jail or just out of prison to vote. Like as long as you're incarcerated, you're able to vote in Washington State, only state in the country. And nobody knew about it because the Secretary of State passed this bill during COVID. So nobody knew about it. And the rule used to be if you had a felony, you could still vote in Washington, but you have to be on paper. So that means no parole, no paper, no parole, probation, no legal financial obligations, LFOs. And then you're able to vote, right? You have to go through all these steps. But there's a lot of weird loopholes that keep people as indentured servants within the system. And anyways, they wanted to basically amplify this idea that let the general public know, like, get out and vote, use your voice. And so the coalition came to me and they're like, hey, listen, we got any ideas? And I'm like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a bunch of murals that show this. We'll do them all around the country or do them all around the state. And then we're gonna like film them, we're gonna make social media content, and then we'll project them onto buildings and we'll gather signatures, right? And I gave them the budget and they're like, I need that. I told them, I need $50,000 to do this. They're like, no, we don't have that. So a year later, they come back and they're like, hey, remember that idea you got? Well, guess what? We're doing it. And we're going to give you one of them. But I agreed to do it because we had to vote. Right? It was a very important election. Yeah, I wanted to have something. Like, really, let's get out there and vote. If you can vote, go out and vote. It's very important. And so downtown on Howard, I did this right before I got shot and died.
When I was 17, my life changed in an instant. I found my little brother hanging in a closet dead. I tried to revive him, but I couldn't. And when I looked in the mirror, all I could see was his dead face because we looked so much alike. I didn't know how to deal with it. I struggled to find a way to cope, and so I made some bad choices that deepened my pain instead of healing it. One night, overwhelmed and lost, I got into an altercation with the police. It escalated quickly, and before I knew it, I was sentenced to 8 years in prison. They sent me to a maximum security prison, and I found myself in a cell with nothing but my thoughts. It was there, along with the concrete walls and the silence, that I started to meditate. It was at first hard, but slowly it began to clear my mind. And I realized that if I wanted a different life, I would have to start building it within myself first. With that clarity, I found myself wanting to create, to imagine a new world. I began drawing and painting whenever I could get my hands on supplies. Little by little, I got better. And those drawings started to represent the world that I wanted to live in, not the one that I had experienced. And when I finally got out, I moved to Washington State and I discovered something that gave me a sense of renewed strength. Felons can vote here. As soon as you're in a jail or a prison, your voice matters and you can vote. It doesn't matter if you're on parole, probation, or if you still have illegal financial obligations. You can vote, and that right, that vote is powerful. It's a declaration that you still have a say and that you still matter and that no one can take that away from you. I know the pain of being forgotten, of feeling like you don't matter at all, but I'm here to tell you that your voice is powerful and it counts. Your voice has massive impacts on local and regional issues that shape our communities, especially when it comes to the issues that directly impact our neighborhoods, our families, and our future. Voting is not just a right, it's a way to take back control, to shape the world into something better, something that reflects your values and your dreams. So remember this, if you're a felon in Washington State, you have the power to vote. You must use it. Your voice matters, it has weight, and it can make a difference.
You check that mural out down in Howard on the freeway underpass. It's a really unique experience, spray painting underneath the bridge downtown at midnight.
Legally.
Yeah.
Yeah, legally. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you all that. I spent a lot of time going back through it, trying to get some footage I think that you all would like. So I hope that you like that. I have some art that is hanging in the JFK library. There's also a visualization there. I was talking a little bit about the screens. I have like this screen thing where like do like these fourth dimensional. We have like 4 screens that pop up, they inflate, and they create. They create a cube, and then there are 4 projectors that project simultaneously onto the screen. So it creates this immersive meditation piece where you imagine yourself as the earth, charging yourself and charging your body, and we pop it up at different places around the planet. But that video is being shown on a loop in the library, so you can go check that out. It's super dope. You can also, sorry, just too many lights going on. I'm very neurodivergent. I wanted to bring up some stuff that I think was really, really powerful. I wanted to bring out things that I thought would have an impact, but I also wanted you all to leave here feeling a little bit more recharged and more refreshed. You know, it's really a hard time right now. It's a difficult time for a lot of us, but we've been through it before, and we've made it through, and we've been stronger. We've learned from it. We've evolved, and evolution is the key for us to make it through. You know, we cannot be mad at idiots who are just idiots. It's like, I'm not going to say it's a comparison, but if you're an adult and you're dealing with a bunch of children that are running around screaming and teething and having panic attacks and sugar crashes and all this stuff, you don't have the ability to be mad back at them. You can't be angry at anger. You can't be angry at ignorant people, right? Or ignorant children. I'm not saying these people are children, but we have to at least understand that there is a way for us to not match emotion with the same emotion that we're receiving, but there's a way for us to logically understand what's taking place and move forward. We do not have to give into emotion. We do not have to give into these ridiculous outlashes and blowbacks that happen. We're able to step away from that all and be able to reaffirm what it is we're trying to achieve. What is our end goal? I really would like to encourage you all to come to the next talk, where we'll be going over an organizing model that's based off of my own traditions, that is basically about us co-creating a future that is healthy, just, and livable by defining that and articulating. I do a lot of public speaking at different places, and one of the things that I really like to tell people when we talk about the future, because everybody does, right? Like, oh, we need a world that's whatever, and then all we need to do is whatever, But this idea that we how to say this? I'm trying to be positive here. This idea that we are separate from each other is an outdated mentality. This idea that we are separate from nature is an outdated modality, right? These are systems that have been taught to us, that we are separate from each other, that we are separate from our sisters, we are separate from our brothers, we are separate from other communities, and that we can trade one community's health for another. But this separation is coming to an end, and this is a time that's been prophesized by numerous world traditions. It's time of turning, it's time of change, it's time of rebirth. There's destruction, right? We've all been fed this dystopian view of the future, that everything will be screwed, everything will be horrible. We're all living in this fascist, post-apocalyptic world. But the truth is that these systems of oppression are dying. They are in their death rattle, and we are seeing it by these ridiculous, outdated Neanderthal power grabs that are happening all around us, and the people are celebrating these moves as being some sort of victory. We have each other, and more importantly, that we will grow, and we will bond, and we will strengthen ourselves. And in the in the destruction lies the creation, and in the chaos emerges clarity. The truth is that we must find clarity within chaos, and we are surrounded by chaos. And it's important for us to stop absorbing outside energy that has been told to us. Stop absorbing outside thoughts that have been given to us. It's important for us to figure things out for ourselves and own it. And own it and feel it. And remember that we don't have fear. Fear is something that they want to give to us. And we have strength, and we have faith, and we have community, and we have each other. But we are not alone in nation states. We are not alone in different countries. We are global citizens. We are no longer part of a nation state only responsive to domestic issues. We are a global community, and we must focus on the future of humanity. And that itself will help us to find the clarity that we so desperately need in the chaos that is our reality today. And I want you all to leave here feeling recharged and reaffirm and understand that we can get in the streets, we can shut shit down. It doesn't have to be here, it can be anywhere. And there are always going to be people there to support logic, to support rights, and to support freedom. And we have each other, and that's all we need. Who protects us? We protect us. That's important to remember. As somebody who has been around the world, who's seeing all kinds of crazy shit, it's like, the fact is that none of these social injustices will matter if we don't have a healthy, livable future. And with the movements that we have, the moves that have been being made are supporting a system that no longer supports life, and it is a de-evolution in us as human beings. And I first didn't want to do any of these. I didn't want to come here and do this. I was like, I'm taking 2 months off of work because I work all the time, and I'm not going to do nothing. I'm just going to sit home and smoke weed all day. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. But after the first time, a friend of mine, Professor Hill, Margot Hill, convinced me to come and do this, and I'm thankful that she did, because it really helped me to pull myself out of the negative spiral. Jesus Christ, it's a lot of negative spiral, right? Like, it's bombardment, but this is what has been designed as this is propaganda. And whenever we're bombarded by this, we have to realize that we are being, used as tools by the colonial forces, and that these colonial forces don't have the power that they used to have. They know this, as we've seen from the 2020 uprising, that we have the power. We are the ones who take control. They are afraid. They are the ones who are in fear. they're the ones who are lashing out of fear because they have lost. So feel free to just absorb that. You have won, you have lost. Celebrate it. I want to thank you all for being here and watching these videos, because sometimes it's a little too much. Sometimes it's a little intense. I'm a little bit of an intense person. I try to be calm, I try to be mellow, but then I condense it all into a video and just hit play and walk away. Really fun stuff. But I did spend I spent the whole week going over 10 years of frontline activism and tried to do so. I didn't point out all the things. I wanted to stop and do voiceovers throughout the thing, but then I would get sidetracked because of all this stuff that was on those videos. But I do want you all to know, like, I did this for nothing. Like, I've been doing this work for 8 years straight. Now I have come to the point where I have a team of 18 people that I am in charge of. They would travel the world doing things, and I can no longer operate the way that I operate. So we are forcing ourselves to become a nonprofit organization. We actually filed last week here in Washington State. We are we filed federally. I don't know what that means anymore, but you know, the idea that we can go out and advocate to these systems that are in control is that what we've been taught is how we make change. We go to our legislators and we lobby, and this is how things change. Well, we don't have that opportunity anymore. I don't think so. The science is telling us that the time for small increment steps domestically has passed. You know, we have failed for that. No one country is going to change and stop the impending climate collapse. It is going to take a giant quantum leap from the world together. And this giant quantum leap is happening. I guarantee you that. As the United States operates internationally, on our behalf, they act as bullies and obstructionists and assholes. And like, it's really, really embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. You know, the first time Trump pulled us out of the UNFCCC process, it was embarrassing because we had gone to the COP and we were trying to advocate. And the whole point is for us as civil society to engage with our country's negotiating team. When we went to go speak with our negotiators, of like, there's nothing they can do. What is it? And that was really embarrassing. Biden came back in. Biden didn't do nothing. He had 4 years to do something. And now Trump has taken us back out of the United Nations process. And so as somebody who focuses on international climate policy, I celebrate this. Because the United States are straight up dickheads. And they will get in there and, you know, 4 countries will work for a decade to put together this beautiful, positive, powerful, impactful, global piece of climate legislation that would have massive impacts on the future of humanity. And the US comes in and says, nah, I'm good. And then China says, I'm good too. Russia's like, yet, right? That's the vibe. And without the US being in the room, there's nobody else to hide behind. That's the thing. That's the key. The rest of the world has the opportunity to evolve as the United States goes the opposite way. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. The rest of the world they're celebrating. I mean, they're thriving. We are not alone. And I know that it feels like that sometimes. But the more that you get together with people who are like mind, of community, and of heart, I want you to talk about the future. Articulate. Speak it into being. Speak it with your family. Speak it with your friends. Speak with your loved ones. Talk about what the future looks like for you. Not in the way that you are being told it is going to be, but the way that you want it to be experienced with your life. Define that future. Articulate it. Talk about it. Celebrate it. Cherish it. These are the goals. These are where your destiny will lead you. When you think about the negative, you think about the negative. When my little brother died, there was this dream that was had where he was crying, and he had this little black book, and it was really, vivid dream. And so I told my mom the dream, and my mom, she was Catholic, so she was at this Catholic bookstore. There was like this, it was a calendar, and each calendar was like a biblical calendar, and each day was like a quote from the Bible or whatever. So picked it up. She flipped it over to his birthday, and it was bookmarked to his birthday. And she opened it up, and it opened up to his birthday, and the passage was a quote from Isaiah 11:1. I'm not religious. I'm not saying. Isaiah 11:1, which read, "From the stump of Jesse, a bud shall blossom." And my little brother's name was Jesse. It's on his gravestone. And after that happened, I started seeing the number sequence 111 everywhere, all the time, always, right? Like I had $111 in my wallet. I'm watching YouTube videos, 1 minute and 11 seconds, 111 points on the basketball game, right? Yeah. Like it was freaky, right? Like it was too much. And so I was doing this meditation that if life is a dream, and I was telling you that there was a symbol that was repeating over and over in my dream, that could equate to real life. So what would that mean in real life? And so that led me to the pseudoscience of numerology, which says that the number sequence 111 is basically the universe taking a snapshot of your thoughts. So whatever you're thinking at the time that you've seen those number sequences 111, whatever you're thinking, the universe took a snapshot of that thought, and you're manifesting it into reality at lightning fast speeds. And it's important for you to be conscious of what you're thinking at all times, and only focus on that which you want, because otherwise you'll be manifesting chaos into your life. The 111 thing really felt it kept stuck with me for forever. And after I found that, it brought clarity to me. This makes sense. This all happened. This all brings it up. I actually have a tattoo on my arm. My studio name is Studio 111. This idea that we have a way to converse outside of time and space, to converse with spirit, to move forward with the hope in the future and safety in each other, is what we have. And we can express that through paintings, through singing, through joy, and through laughter. It doesn't have to be sadness. It doesn't have to be despair. There has always been evil in the world. There's always been good in the world. And it's up to us to embody that which we choose. I want to salute you all for taking time to come through the snow, come out here, watch some videos, listen to me talk about being a deer. I just want to salute you all for coming here, listening to these words, and hopefully that something I said or something you saw struck a chord within you. And please, release your fear. And remember that you have won, that we have each other, we protect each other, and we are the future.